ever catch yourself wondering if what you're putting out there is actually, landing?
Oh, all the time.
Or what people really think about something you care about? It's a universal thing, right?
Absolutely. We all want to connect, don't we?
Yeah.
And know if our efforts are making a difference. And that's exactly what we're digging into today.
You got it. We're taking a deep dive into the principles of communication research inspired by, well, a really great chapter by Viggo Sigurd.
Mm-hmm.
Think of this as your shortcut to understanding how to get solid information that can seriously boost your communication game, in any area of your life.
Exactly. And look, this isn't just for the research wonks, right? These principles are surprisingly useful for anyone.
Right.
Whether you're trying to get your point across to your family, lead a team at work, or maybe share a big idea, knowing how to gather real information, it just changes everything.
So our mission today is basically to unpack the core ideas behind communication research and show you how a thoughtful, step-by-step approach can lead to those aha moments.
Yeah, those insights.
And just smarter decisions, really. Our source does touch on its relevance to Christian ministry, but honestly, the core principles are gold for anyone who communicates. Anyone at all.
Precisely. Sigurd's work explores the fundamental questions we should be asking ourselves, the different ways we can find answers, and crucially, why this kind of digging is so valuable.
So we'll touch on things like surveys, maybe questionnaires.
Yep, surveys, questionnaires, and making sense of the information we collect, all that good stuff.
Okay, so where do we even begin to unpack this? It sounds like a big topic.
It can seem that way, but a fantastic place to start is with a foundational way of thinking about communication. Laswell's famous question really nails it. Who says what, to whom, in which channel, and with what effect?
Right. Okay, I think I've heard that before. Laswell. So it's like breaking down communication to its most basic parts, the real essentials.
Exactly. The key insight here is to always break down your communication efforts into these 5 core elements: who, what, whom, channel, effect. Because if one is weak, the whole thing might falter. It's like a 5-legged stool, all legs need to be strong, right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
It makes you think about the communicator, the message itself, the audience, how you're getting the message across the channel, and of course what happens as a result, the effect.
It really does. It brings to mind all those times I've thought, gosh, I wish I knew, what people were really thinking. Our source actually highlights some common versions of that. I wish I knew how people in this community think about our organization. Or
I wish I knew who's actually paying attention to what I'm saying.
yeah,
Right.
he's like, I wish I knew if what I'm doing is actually making a difference. That's a big one.
It is. I wish I knew the best way to communicate. These are the exact puzzles that communication research helps us solve.
So it takes us beyond just guessing.
Absolutely. It gives us a structured way, a system, to find real answers.
So it's not just some abstract theory floating around in academia.
Not at all. Communication research is a really practical field. It borrows ideas and methods from all sorts of areas, like understanding cultures from anthropology,
Right.
how groups work from sociology, how to connect with people from marketing research, and how different ways of communicating work, from media research.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like using different tools from a well-stocked toolbox depending on the job.
That's a great way to put it.
And our source mentions looking at things with both numbers and with understanding people's experiences, like the feelings behind it.
Yes, exactly. Think of it this way. Numbers, like from survey results, tell you what is happening. That's quantitative research.
Okay, quantitative, got it.
But qualitative research, that helps you understand why people feel the way they do, often through conversations, like in focus groups.
Ah, okay.
Both give you valuable information just from, different angles.
Now, our source talks about thinking about research like a marketer would. What's the big idea there? That sounds interesting.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the idea of research being a key part of making smart choices, really integrating it.
Not just an afterthought.
No, not at all. It's about being strategic and only looking for the information you truly need for specific goals.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're trying to figure out how to best talk about a new project, the research should directly help you pick the right words and the right ways to share that information. It should guide the strategy.
So no more just gathering information because we can, or because it seems interesting.
Precisely. It's about being focused, purposeful. And from this perspective, our source breaks down communication research into 4 key things. First, it's a systematic activity.
Okay, let's dig into that one. Systematic means like Orderly.
Well-planned and organized, exactly.
Mhm.
It means a researcher needs to know their stuff and carry things out carefully, paying attention to all the little details.
Right.
It's not just randomly asking a few people a few questions. There's a process.
Got it. Thoughtful and on purpose. Okay. What's the second characteristic?
It's an objective activity. This means trying to be, well, scientific about it
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Objective. Keeping feelings out of it?
Basically, yeah. The goal is to avoid your own biases and feelings getting in the way, even if the results aren't what you were hoping for, maybe especially if they aren't.
Ooh, that can be tough.
It can be. But stepping back and being objective is key to getting believable, trustworthy results.
That makes sense. You have to be willing to see what the data actually shows, not just what you want it to show.
Exactly right. The third key phrase is provision of information. This just means the research is always about a specific situation, a specific context.
Okay.
It's about getting real data that matters to a particular problem or question you're facing right now.
So it's not just thinking in the abstract, it's grounded.
Nope, it's grounded in what's actually happening. And finally, the fourth thing is that it's research for decision-making.
Ah, back to the practical application.
Yep, this goes back to that marketing idea.
Hmm.
The whole point is to help organizations, or even individuals, use their resources wisely.
Time, money, effort.
All of it. To achieve what they're trying to do and connect with the right people effectively.
Right. It's all about helping you take informed action. Okay. Now, the source mentions ways to collect data, like talking to groups of people, focus groups, you said,
Focus groups.
and doing surveys. Can you tell us a bit more about those approaches?
Certainly. Getting qualitative data often involves those focus groups. Basically, guided conversations with a small group to explore their thoughts and feelings about something specific. You get rich, detailed insights.
Okay, the why.
Exactly. Quantitative data usually comes from surveys where you use structured questionnaires to get numbers and statistics from a larger group of people. That tells you more about the what and how many.
And the source points out that figuring out things like people's attitudes, their feelings, maybe even their spiritual beliefs, that can be especially tricky to measure.
Absolutely. It's relatively easy to count how many people showed up to an event, right?
Yeah.
But understanding how beliefs might have shifted or how people feel about something complex that requires more careful and thoughtful research methods. You can't just ask a simple yes-no question.
Okay, let's zoom in on surveys for a second. The source says they often use something called sampling. Why is that so important? Why not just ask everyone?
Well, because most of the time, trying to get information from everyone you're interested in, the whole population, just isn't realistic.
Too big.
Usually, yeah. Imagine trying to get feedback from every single person in a big city, or every customer a large company has. It would take forever and cost a fortune.
Right, okay. Impractical. So sampling is a way to get a good idea without talking to absolutely everyone.
Precisely. And the way researchers choose who to include in their sample isn't random guessing. It's actually quite scientific.
How so?
They use specific methods, probability sampling for instance, to make sure the smaller group accurately reflects the larger group they want to understand.
So it's representative.
Ideally, yes. And this allows them to even measure how much their results might be off the margin of error and make pretty accurate predictions about the whole population based on just the sample.
It's kind of surprising. You'd think talking to everyone would automatically give you the most accurate picture.
You would think so, wouldn't
Yeah.
you? And that's where a key, maybe slightly counterintuitive benefit of sampling comes in. While surveying everyone doing a census might seem like the best approach, it actually has a higher chance of what are called non-sampling errors.
Non-sampling errors, what are those?
These are mistakes that happen during the research process itself, things not related to who you pick, but how you did the research. Like maybe confusing questions on the survey, interviewers accidentally leading people to certain answers, or even just errors when entering the data into the computer.
Okay. Human error, process errors.
Exactly. And these kinds of errors can actually be a bigger problem in a huge survey, a census, just because of the sheer scale. With a smaller sample, researchers can often manage the process more carefully, train interviewers better, check data more thoroughly.
And then potentially get more reliable results overall.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off, but good sampling is often more accurate in practice.
That's fascinating. And the source even mentions something about contamination. What's that about?
Yes, that's particularly relevant in situations where you want to measure change over time. Like, say, giving people a survey before and after they attend a workshop. a pre-test and a post-test.
Okay.
If everyone takes the first survey, their answers on the second one might be influenced simply by having already thought about the topic because of that first survey.
The first survey sort of primes them.
Exactly. It contaminates the results of the second survey. But if you use sampling, you can survey one group before the workshop and a different but comparable group after the workshop.
So the second group isn't influenced by the first survey.
Correct. It gives you a cleaner measure of whether the workshop itself really made a difference without that contamination effect.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk questionnaires now. They seem like a huge part of doing surveys effectively.
They absolutely are. They are the main tool for collecting that quantitative survey data. A questionnaire is really just a structured set of questions designed to connect what you need to know with the people who hopefully have the information.
The respondents.
Right.
And it sounds like creating a good one is harder than it looks. The source really emphasizes that you need to actually study research methods. It's not just jotting down questions.
Absolutely not. It's surprisingly easy to mess up. If you don't design your questions well, you can end up with inaccurate or misleading information, measurement errors, essentially.
So how do you avoid that?
Well, it's really a mix of art and science, as the source puts it. You need to understand the scientific principles of how to ask good questions, clear wording, avoiding bias, proper scales. But there's also an art to making it flow well, being clear, and not confusing or frustrating the person answering.
So what are the big questions a researcher should ask themselves about their own questionnaire to make sure it's good?
The source highlights 3 crucial ones. First, am I getting accurate information?
Okay, accuracy.
Second, am I getting valuable information? Is it actually useful for my purpose?
Right, the need to know thing again.
Exactly. And third, is the question measuring what it is supposed to measure? And these questions get right to the heart of what researchers call reliability and validity.
Reliability and validity. Okay, those sound like really important terms to remember.
They're absolutely foundational. Think of it like this. Reliability is about consistency. If you use the same measuring tool again in the same way, would you get the same result? Is it trustworthy?
Like a vacuum scale giving you the same weight 5 minutes apart?
Pretty much, yeah. Validity, on the other hand, is about accuracy in a different sense. Are you actually measuring the concept you intend to measure?
Ah, okay. So the scale might be reliable, give the same wrong weight every time, but not valid if it's set wrong.
That's a perfect analogy. You could have a very consistent, reliable way of measuring completely the wrong thing.
Gotcha.
And to make sure your measurements are valid, researchers need to think carefully about and define the constructs they're trying to understand.
Constructs. Those are the underlying ideas, right? Like loyalty or beliefs, the source mentions, things you can't just point to.
Precisely. Many of the things we care most about when we communicate aren't things we can see or count directly. How do you see brand loyalty? How do you put a number on someone's faith?
Yeah. Good point.
Researchers need to come up with clear operational definitions, ways to measure these abstract ideas indirectly, maybe through a series of related questions. And they need to be really aware of the assumptions they're making when they do that.
The example in the source, he is a good Christian, really highlights that difficulty, doesn't it?
It really does. What does good even mean in that context? What specific beliefs or behaviors are you assuming? Define that. It's incredibly hard to measure something so broad and personal in a standardized way.
Right. What one person thinks makes someone a good believer could be totally different for someone else. Huge assumptions there.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's say you've wrestled with constructs, designed your questionnaire carefully, collected all your data. What's the next step? Just stare at a pile of forms.
Hopefully not. That's when you get into data processing and analysis. Once people have answered your questionnaires, you need to organize all that raw information.
How does that work?
Well, it typically involves editing, checking the questionnaires for completeness, legibility, consistency, then coding, assigning numerical codes to the different answers, especially for open-ended questions.
Okay, turning words into numbers somehow.
Right. And then entering all that coded data into a computer program like SPSS or even just a spreadsheet so you can actually analyze it statistically.
Sounds like a lot of meticulous work behind the scenes.
It is, but it's absolutely crucial for turning those raw answers into meaningful insights. You can't just eyeball hundreds of surveys.
So what kind of analysis do you do? Just get averages?
Averages or means are often a starting point. But just looking at the overall numbers, the totals or averages, often only tells you part of the story. You usually get much deeper understanding from cross-tabulation.
Cross-tabulation. Okay, what's that?
Crosstabs, for short. This is where you compare different groups within your data.
Ah, like comparing answers from men versus women.
Exactly. As the source mentions, you might want to see if men and women have different levels of satisfaction with the product, or maybe if different age groups hold different opinions on an issue.
So you're looking for patterns between groups.
Precisely. It helps you see connections and differences within your data that you'd miss just looking at the overall totals. You might also look for other patterns, like how answers to one question relate to answers to another.
That makes a lot of sense. You can start to see how different factors might be related. And then you bring in the heavy-duty statistics.
Absolutely. This is where having experienced researchers or statisticians involved is really important.
Because they know which buttons to press?
Well, more than that. They know which statistical tools are appropriate for the type of data you have, nominal, ordinal, interval ratio, and for the specific questions you're trying to answer.
So it's not one size fits all.
Definitely not. They'll use things like mean, median, mode to describe the center of the data, but also tests like the chi-square test, t-tests, correlations.
Okay, technical stuff.
Yeah, technical stuff to help determine if the differences or relationships you see in your sample data are statistically significant, meaning, are they likely to be real differences in the larger population, or could they have just happened by random chance?
Got it. Making sure the patterns are real. Okay, let's loop back to validity for a second. You mentioned it's about measuring what you intend to measure. The source really emphasizes the importance of asking what I need to know versus what I would like to know.
Yes, that's such a super important distinction for practical research. It's easy to get curious and ask lots of interesting questions.
Scope creep.
Exactly. But your research should really be driven by specific answerable questions that you need answered to make better decisions or achieve your goals.
So focus is key.
Absolutely. Having a clear, well-developed list of your actual information needs before you even start designing the questionnaire ensures that the data you spend time and money collecting is actually going to be useful.
So it answers the so what question.
Precisely. Interesting information isn't always useful information if it doesn't help you move forward on your objectives.
And the source briefly mentions different kinds of validity, like specific types.
Yes, it touches on a few technical types researchers consider. Things like construct validity. Does the measure behave like the theory says the construct should behave? Content validity. Do the questions adequately cover the full range of the concept? Concurrent validity. Does your measure correlate well with other existing measures of the same thing? And predictive validity. Can your measure predict some future outcome it's supposed to predict?
Wow, okay. So there are layers to checking validity.
There are. These are basically different angles from which researchers try to build confidence that their measurement tool is actually hitting the target they're aiming for. It's about accuracy and appropriateness.
Okay, so you need validity measuring the right thing, and you also need to be measuring it consistently. That brings us back to reliability.
Exactly. They go hand in hand. Reliable information is consistent, it's trustworthy, it's dependable. You want to know that if conditions were the same, the measurement would be the same.
And you increase reliability by minimizing errors.
Yes, minimizing errors in the whole measurement process. The less error, the more reliable the measure.
What are some common ways those measurement errors can creep in? Where do things go wrong?
Well, the source lists a few potential culprits. There can be short-term influences on the respondent, like their mood that day, or maybe how tired they are, or their health.
Okay, things specific to the person at that moment.
Right. Then there are situational factors like maybe the room was noisy or other people were present, or maybe the interview location changed between measures.
The environment matters.
It can. Then there are errors related to the measurement process itself, the way questions are asked, maybe the interviewer's tone or nonverbal cues. Ambiguous or poorly worded questions are a big source of error. And then, as we mentioned before, mistakes can happen in coding the answers or tabulating the results.
Wow. So lots of potential pitfalls along the way where noise can get to the signal.
That's a good way to put it. And the source makes a useful distinction between systematic error and random error.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Systematic error is like a consistent bias. It affects the measurement in the same way every time, like that scale that's always 5 pounds off. It's reliable in its wrongness, but not valid.
Consistently wrong.
Random error is more unpredictable. It fluctuates from one measurement to the next due to those chance factors mood, misreading a question slightly differently each time, etc. Random error primarily affects reliability.
Making the results less consistent.
Exactly. Good research tries to minimize both types of error.
Now, the source also talks about how communication research can contribute specifically to missiology, but reading through those points, they really seem to apply to almost any kind of communication effort, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. I think the context is missiology, but the principles are universal for effective communication. These points really highlight the broad benefits of taking a research-informed approach.
So what are some of those key contributions?
Well, first, it pushes us, the communicators, to ask the tough questions of ourselves, focusing on those key last will elements. Who, what, whom, channel effect. Are we clear on those?
Okay, forcing clarity.
Second, it helps us be good stewards of our resources, time, money, people, by actually trying to measure the results, the real impact of what we're doing, not just assuming it works.
Measuring effectiveness.
Right. Third, it emphasizes really studying the audience. Who are they? What do they think, feel, need? How do they see the world?
Know your audience 101, but systematically.
Exactly. Fourth, it assists in developing effective strategies that are actually based on research findings, on evidence, not just on intuition or tradition.
Strategy based on data.
Fifth, it aids in choosing the best communication methods or channels for a given situation and audience. Are we using the right tools?
Makes sense.
And those guiding questions of the source list are just fantastic for framing this whole mindset.
Let's recap those quickly. What do I need to know?
Why do I need to know it?
Where can I get this information?
From whom should I get it?
When do I need it by?
How will I actually use this information?
And what will be the result of using it?
They're a brilliant framework for thinking about any information gathering you might do, whether it's a massive formal research project or just trying to get a better handle on things informally.
And the source makes it really clear that having this kind of research perspective or mindset is valuable for everyone involved in communication, not just the professional researchers on the team. Right?
Exactly. Developing that curiosity, that discipline of constantly seeking good information is a huge plus for any leader, any communicator.
So we can all be researchers in a sense.
In a sense, yes. Thinking critically about information.
Yeah.
And when whole teams embrace this idea of gathering information collaboratively, they tend to make much smarter, more effective decisions.
And the source rightly points out the danger of research just gathering dust, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. That's a classic problem. Research reports don't do anyone any good if they just sit on a shelf or in a forgotten email folder.
So collaboration is key.
Absolutely. Collaboration between the decision makers who need the information and the researchers who gather it is vital to ensure the right questions get asked in the first place, and that the findings actually get used to make a difference. Buy-in from leadership is crucial.
It sounds like communication research really pulls from and integrates a lot of different areas of knowledge. It's multidisciplinary.
It really is. As the source sums up nicely, its key contributions from that perspective are: it combines methods from various fields. It maintains a clear focus on the core mission or objective.
Right, the why.
It always prioritizes effectiveness.
Getting results.
And it strongly emphasizes practical application. How does this help us do things better?
So, drilling it all down, the big takeaway here seems to be that understanding the basics of communication research isn't just for the specialists, the media experts.
Not at all.
It's really for any leader, anyone who wants to communicate more effectively and make smarter choices based on real information, not just hunches.
Precisely. And that partnership, the people who need the insights, working closely with those who can help gather them, that's crucial for making sure the whole process is actually useful.
Asking the right questions and having a systematic way to find the answers is fundamental.
Absolutely. Fundamental to effective communication, no matter what you're trying to achieve or who you're trying to reach.
Okay, so to wrap things up then, we've seen how communication research offers this systematic, objective way to really get a handle on your audience and understand the actual impact of your message.
It cuts through the noise.
It helps answer those nagging "I wish I knew" questions that we all have. And it really takes a lot of the guesswork out of decision-making by forcing you to focus on what you actually need to know.
And for you listening, the learner, getting your head around these principles gives you the tools, really, to tackle any communication challenge with more clarity and more confidence.
Right.
It hopefully leads to more of those valuable aha moments and less of that feeling of just, shouting into the void and hoping for the best.
Definitely less feeling overwhelmed. Okay, so here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on. Think about one specific area in your life or your work right now. Where could taking a more systematic, maybe even a slightly research-informed approach to understanding your audience or the impact of your communication, where could that make the biggest difference for you?
Yeah.
How might you actually apply even just one or two of these principles, maybe asking those guiding questions in your own context? Something to think about.